Right, we're back. Episode 9, room 301, and we've got my colleague, Mr. Bingham, with me today, who is head of
Hello.
design and creative. So, Pete, want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi there. So I'm Pete. I'm the head of design and creative content at the Digital Maze, and I've managed UX and design and all sorts of creative content type stuff on hundreds of websites for nearly 20 years now. So hopefully we'll be answering some of the questions today and get to know a little bit about how UX and SEO fit together. I've done quite a few UX audits on many clients' websites over the years, and they've been described as both reinvigorating and devastating, which I think is fairly accurate. That's what we aim for.
Well, that's
That's
it. We're going to be talking about all things UX, which is obviously Pete's expertise, but also just how it links so closely with search engine visibility now and how it just can't be ignored when it comes to SEO. I think that's been a massive change probably certainly over the last sort of 5 years. It's become much, much more important. So, if you don't mind me starting, Pete, I'm going to ask a few questions. That's okay, mate.
Let's go.
So, in your mind, how has the landscape changed over the last few years in regards to UX and SEO?
Well, yeah, like you've already hinted at, I mean, it has changed completely. Whereas, if you think about 10 years ago, we were having discussions as UX designers, and the SEO community probably didn't really factor us into that. So it was very much designers and SEOs. And over the last few years, definitely, Google has put sort of more focus on UX. Uh, and as a result, all websites have had to consider it more than they have in the past. So Google's algorithms have become far more sophisticated, and so UX and SEO are now really being spoken about in the same terms because their goals are aligned. If you think about 10 years ago, there was a huge focus. Google had a huge focus on pushing everything to mobile first. So as
Mm,
designers,
yeah.
then we were designing for mobile, of course, 5 years ago, as we are now. But there's definitely this shift towards how a user would now be focusing most of their attention on a mobile experience. And so gradually we can see that Google has been pushing more towards this idea of the user-centric model, where the SEOs, perhaps in the last 5 years, have started to sort of wake up to this. And as UX designers, we've started to realize that there are things that SEOs do that maybe we need to start thinking about as well when we design
Yeah.
websites and content as well. So, of course, now the biggest shift is towards AI, and the whole search engine landscape is shifting again. And we sort of have to sort of realize, where do UX designers come into that, as SEO is also thinking about what are search engines doing now. So it's definitely being a shift more towards the user and an experience first. But it's such a cutting edge at the moment. We don't know what AI is going to be, and we don't know what SEO is going to involve. And UX and SEO have to work together to realize their shared goals with what Google decides to do next and where our AI goes next. So we have to work together. It's not just two separate entities anymore. They are the same thing.
No, absolutely. I think we've seen that in a lot of our client strategies, and obviously we're fortunate that we've got yourself within the SEO team, so we don't have to be biased toward what comes first, what comes last. We just react to what the customer needs most, really. And
Right.
often is the case when we get a new customer that we do need to address some issues on the website that
Mhm.
would it's all well and good bringing traffic to a website, but if we don't feel it's going to convert well enough, we're going to offer the right experience, then we're not leveraging our expertise in the best way possible. So for anyone wondering, why do you think it's important for people to consider both UX and SEO together in their strategy? They're thinking about employing maybe an agency to look after their SEO. Do you think it's important that the SEO agency they pick does have a UX expert in place to support that strategy?
Absolutely. You just can't ignore it anymore. It's you can't just say we're just doing SEO, because if you assume by just doing SEO we're talking traditional SEO, then you've not been
Yeah.
really paying attention. So SEO brings traffic in, good SEO brings traffic in, climb up the SERPs and all that. But you still need a good website to seal that deal. You bring people to your website and then they won't convert because the UX is rubbish. But Google has been talking about this for years. It's not a new thing. Google has expected websites to be of a certain quality for many years now, and it only seems to be coming to a head now that people are going, oh no, why is my traffic tanking? Why am I going down the search? Because people are now talking about this search experience optimization, and really UX and SEO do share the same goals, to rise up the rankings, drive traffic, and make money. They're not an either or anymore. They are just one. So there are hundreds of reasons why you could just say, okay, I just want SEO, but ultimately SEO is UX now, and UX is SEO. So take something like accessibility, for example, hugely forgotten about by most clients because it's deemed almost a nice to have. Whereas if you consider, apparently, if you look at ONS figures, around 20% have some form of disability, and by ignoring accessibility, you are in effect excluding a huge chunk of society. So you're going to miss out on revenue. So there are very sort of, if you like, black and white reasons for businesses to want to invest in UX, but there are also, huge common sense reasons. I mean, you can't avoid it nowadays. You can't ignore it. Google is more focused on SEO than ever before. UX as ever before, and it forms part of SEO now. It is part of the same thing. They're one and the same thing.
And do you think it's more? Is this more for B2C, B2B? Is it more important on e-commerce websites? If you had a pot of money to spend as a sort of marketing manager or marketing leader, and you were managing maybe a B2B website, would you place as much importance on UX as you would potentially if you're running an e-commerce store, so to speak?
Well, that's a good question. I think they're equally important. I don't think it really matters whether you're B2B or B2C. Ultimately, it's about the end user, isn't it? So you have to understand the user intent wherever that may be. So if you're selling to businesses, it's a slightly different approach, but you still, if you're selling to end users, the average person on the street or whatever, you still have to understand that user, and you still have to engineer your site and your content and ultimately your SEO depending on the user intent. So I don't think it particularly matters. I just think that it definitely matters to Google now, so it should matter to you, whatever your business is.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'm sorry, we're going off piece here because I know we had a set of things we were going to discuss, but I'm just really interested now. So we talk about CRO and we talk about UX almost separately. Are they the same thing?
UX and CRO, are they different things? Well, the user experience is going to determine whether or not somebody converts ultimately. So CRO being conversion rate optimization is where we mess around with a load of things on your website to try and get a user to convert. Ultimately, whether a user converts or not is down to experience. There are signals, of course, that you can put into your content and your layout, which will improve a user's experience and therefore make it more likely that they will convert, just as there are signals and messages within your content that you can add to make it rank better and therefore drive more traffic to the site. So UX, CRO, SEO, I think they're all
same thing.
linked. They're not all the same thing, but they are very intrinsically linked, and even more so nowadays. Yeah. Does that answer the question? I don't know if it does.
It does. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I speak to a lot of the customers that are potentially looking at coming on board to take one of our services, and one of the things I'm always trying to explain is if you've got a decent amount of traffic coming to your website, and in this instance, an e-commerce website already, some people always default to I need more traffic. That's not always the answer. If you can just add, in some cases, 0.5% to your conversion rate just by providing a better experience and just doing some small tweaks, that can have a much greater impact on bottom line than adding maybe 10% traffic. So I think it's just the lens in which the customer sees the challenge through, and I think it's definitely becoming more focal point in conversation design habit.
It's a
Yeah,
numbers game, isn't it? So if more people come to your site, you are going to get more conversions.
yeah, of course,
In
yeah,
theory. But if you concentrate on your UX, that the people come to your site and actually want to connect with your site, understand what you're selling, have all the information there, then they're going to be more likely to convert. And I would definitely focus heavily on that, especially when it comes to e-commerce. Yeah.
yeah, no, definitely. Well, look, we had just for the listeners, we have a quarterly sort of business or sort of team get together as a business, where each of the delivery teams go through and sort of present to the wider business what they're up to, sort of information on their expertise, and just really to educate other teams within our business on what they're up to and what they can expect to see. Now, I have to have the listeners. I have to have you tell the listeners what you did with Mr. Barker in terms of the romantic. You have to
Oh
remind
God,
me.
do we have to?
We
It
do.
was. I would like to say it was Wayne Barker's idea, but it was actually mine.
Was it?
So yeah,
Surprise me.
we were we were talking about how this very thing really, how UX and SEO have come together to become this idea of shared goals, and how the relationship has changed. And if you've ever seen a Wayne Barker talk, he likes to infuse it with pop culture references, a bit of comedy and whatever. And we thought, so how can we talk about how maybe a relationship that wasn't there initially, that had shared goals, moved into something where they are intrinsically intertwined, and we thought we stumbled upon the idea of a romantic comedy, which
Yeah.
follows a very sort of formula basically, which is two people meet, there's a spark, and then all of a sudden there is an issue between the relationship. So whilst there's a spark, we can see that this could work, there's friction between the two. So friction between UX and SEO. They want the same things, but they are looking in different directions to achieve it. And throughout the process of this talk, we gradually came to the sort of conclusion that there is a romantic theme between UX and SEO, and now we can form this unison where the UX designers and the traditional SEOs realize that now Google is saying you guys have got to work together if you want to rank higher, and therefore, obviously, you probably need to see it in action. I don't think we recorded it, sadly, but maybe we'll do it live one day.
You
And in
really
the
should.
end, but yeah, so Google has been talking about what users want since its conception, and it's important to realize that people do come to your site for great content and for information, not just for a nice design layout. And that's how SEOs have traditionally seen it. Designers want it to look nice, and designers are going, "What have you done to my beautiful site that I've designed? You've stuffed it full of keywords. Uh, uh, you've broken my layout. You've broken the content on the site. And now it's about, well, we need to work together to create a better experience for everybody. UX is SEO, is UX, is my sort of catchphrase at the moment. I think everyone's pretty much sick of hearing it at the Digital Maze. But we drive traffic, we engage the user, and then we increase conversions. So SEOs are happy, UX designers are happy, and the clients, over the moon because they're getting more conversions. A love
There
story.
you go. Perfect formula. More traffic, more conversions. Convert more of that traffic.
Convert more of
Well,
that
look,
traffic.
sort of SEO is going. That's it. SEO is going. It's much more down a sort of human first approach nowadays. I think you wind back the time maybe 10 years or so, or even less than that. It was all about beating the system. It was about stuffing as many keywords in as
Absolutely.
possible. And it was all very systematic. Who can do more of X? Who can do more
Yeah.
of Y? And all that kind of stuff. But it's much more holistic now. It's much more human first. So, any sort of practical ways in terms of how they, UX and SEO works together to improve that overall marketing effort and sort of leans towards that human first approach? Because I feel like UX is massively key in that.
Yeah, I think it comes from just realizing that you can't really work in silos anymore. You have to be part of a team, and whilst it's easy to say that, and most people say, "Oh, we are part of the team, we do listen, whatever." But I think on the ground floor, whenever you come into either it's an existing website or a brand new website project, you need to be talking to, as a designer, you need to be talking to an SEO. As an SEO, you need to be talking to a designer, because this human first approach that you've said is is really key, and a lot of that I think has been lost on the SEO community for many years now, because they are trying to beat the algorithm, they are trying to beat the system. You know, we've we've moved on from black hat SEO techniques 10, 15 years ago, and now we're sort of seeing a few interesting ones like, oh, you know, AI is now, Google's all about AI, Bing's all about AI. How can we beat the system so that Google will now, in its AI responses, show our website first? And uh, I
Mm.
think that's again like black hat. That will work for a certain amount of time, but Google's going to get better at it, just like it did with, you know, all the
Yeah.
nasty stuff that we were doing 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And so it's really important that you look at the long game, and the long game has always been about the users. So if the SEOs can concentrate on not just trying to beat the system, listening to UX designers and saying, you know, this is about the users, and you know, UX designers need to listen to the SEO community as well, because they know what ranks and they know how to rank. But there has to be a longer, more human centric idea of how we create websites going forward. You know, we can't just give in to the idea that AI is the next big thing, and oh, we found a way to cheat it, let's do that. Because you know, if everyone finds a way to cheat it, Google will find out about it and move on. Something one of my colleagues, Rebecca, who's I think done a couple of podcasts before on the webinar,
She has
she
indeed.
was talking about, you know, learning from people outside, you know, design and SEO, and talking to traditional salespeople as well, because sometimes we are so focused on our own little, you know, as I said, talking about silos, that we forget that, you know, salespeople are part of the process as well. Users are part of the process as well. So we need to talk to the users of the site. We need to talk to salespeople. You know, and she went on to say, you know, if two people walk into a shop, they're not going to be told and shown the exact same thing. They're going to be, there's an approach to tailoring content based on user intent, and studying from how salespeople do that. You know, what users want as well. So I think really the way that things are going to shift is to work together, but also pull in advice from other teams, maybe less traditional SEO, less traditional design, UX. Look at the whole ecosystem of what creates a business, a website, a product, a brand. You know, talk to brand designers as well, because they're a part of that too. It's not enough just to rely on traditional anymore, I don't think.
No, no, I completely agree. I think, yeah, user experience. The clues in the name, isn't it? It's not just what people think it is. It's not just design. It's not just visuals. In my opinion, it extends to everything around the brand, all the
Absolutely,
way to
yeah,
the copy on the website, for example.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
think some people get it confused with just good design, which obviously is
Absolutely.
key. Good design is, everyone likes good design, but it's not just that. It extends a lot further than that. So, in fact, have you got any examples, practical examples of UX that extends beyond just looking a certain way?
Have I got any examples? You put me on the spot now, haven't you? Um, well, if you think about UX as a more sort of wider thing than just how something looks on a
Mm,
site, you need to think about how your content is written as well. Again, going back to user intent. So, you know, if you know your audience, you know that they will want to, they will have a better experience if you're talking to them as they'd expect to be spoken to. So if you have a younger audience or an older audience, you need to make sure you're tailoring your content to that. That's part of UX. It's not just design.
yeah,
Um, the other thing is, how do certain audiences want their content? Because we always talk about written content or maybe images or whatever, but a lot of websites ignore video content, which is huge. And obviously, you look at TikTok and things like that. It's only going to get bigger because it's easier for them to sit there and watch a video than to scroll through, you know, however many paragraphs or scroll through a series of images or whatever, download a PDF, that's something. So user experience isn't just about layout and design. It's the whole thing. It's how do users want to access information from your website, and how are they going? How is the best? What is the best format for them to digest that sort of information? And it's not always the thing you think it's going to be, without speaking to your users, knowing your audience, speaking to your clients, looking into the history of how things, and keeping your finger on the pulse as well, because stuff shifts, within a few years. We look at the amount of video content we're now consuming; it's everywhere, and it's nearly constant. So it's more about seeing it as a whole, looking at the user and trying to see it through their point of view, not just design. No, not just a layout, not just what your website looks like. Consider the content. What kind of content? I think that.
Yeah, and I think it does. Yeah, and I think that's why it's so important to focus on not being all things to all people. Because if you've got a specific type of person you're trying to target from a sales point of view or a lead generation point of view, they are going to want their content in a certain way. They're going to want something to work in a certain way. There's going to be different nuances that they want, that a different set of people will want something different. So I think when it comes to user personas and research and all that kind of stuff, that's where that really comes into its own, where it's, sometimes it's considered a bit fluffy and maybe a little bit expensive for what it is, and the rewards it will, that you'll yield from that. But as you get more sophisticated, as marketing strategies become more sophisticated, that's when research like that, understanding the customer, it starts to really impact the wider strategy, not just that UX, not just SEO, not just PPC, but literally everything.
Yeah.
So, I think it's super important to really know who your customer is, and that can then dictate the experience that you serve up from a website point of view and from a brand point of view. So have you got any examples? Have you got any examples of how optimizing UX can positively impact SEO or vice versa from your experience?
Yeah, we have. I mean, we've been doing this for a long time now, and we use quite a few tools. There's Hotjar, which we've been using for I don't know how long, but I think since it first came out, actually. And recently, we've been looking at Microsoft Clarity. So what these do is they sort of spy on your website, on your users. It's quite nefarious in a way, but they know about it by looking at the cookie notice, hopefully. And what it does is it tracks real users, and you can sort of see videos of people using your website with anonymized data, I will add. So you can't see them entering card details or anything like that. But also, at the end of, say, a few weeks or a certain amount of visitors, you'll be given a heat map to sort of see what real users are doing. So in the past, what we've done is we've sort of studied these heat maps and talked to users and talked to clients and the SEOs, and sort of tried to build a picture of what users are doing, where they're frustrated, etc., etc., etc. And in doing so, we can sort of see, oh, maybe there's not enough content on that page, or maybe they're struggling to find the right CTA, or they can't download the right PDF or anything like that. So what we've done is we've looked at these sort of heat maps and videos, and we've tweaked parts of sites and done A/B testing to see if it does have a positive impact. And almost every time we've tweaked something, we've seen incredible results.
Yeah.
Um,
And we've seen that on our own websites as well, Baron.
We have, yeah. You see upticks in traffic. So that the content has improved to a point where now it's ranking more, and you see increased conversions. So people are coming to the website, they're seeing the information they need. It's relevant to what they were looking for, and they're converting quicker. So from a copy point of view, we need to you've got to make sure that it's good enough for the search engines, so that Google's seeing this and that it is ranking more. But also when people are on your site and reading it, it's easy and digestible for them, and then they can go and convert as well. So we've sort of combined our sort of resources, looking at data, looking at heat maps, talking to the SEOs, talking to the copywriters, improving layout, making sure CTAs, and almost every time we've seen massive improvements on websites, increased conversions, increased traffic. So it's definitely worth, if you can, having a look at some of these heat maps. Clarity, I think, is free. I think Hotjar is a paid for one now, but certainly if you install Clarity on your website, Microsoft Clarity, and start to look at the data and then talk to other people in your team. What do you think this means? What happens? What do you think they're looking for here? And in fact, I think in Clarity now, there is an AI feature which will look at your data and say, it looks like this user tried to do this, couldn't find that, blah, 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 blah. There's still the interpretation part of it. So you still have to go, okay, so what should we change? And that still involves talking to people who actually know the website, know the client, whatever. But also we've seen things like just improving site speed, optimizing images, things that you think are sort of common sense. We've seen so many client websites where we've got to the site and it's so slow. Well, the images aren't optimized, and so you go on a website and your product image is taking 20 seconds to download, or it's all pixelated or whatever. So improving site speed, optimizing images, and all these things. If you can improve your user experience just by speeding up a website, again, you see dramatic impact on whether someone will stay around for long enough. So, bounce rates and how long someone sticks around on a page will give you this information, and you can sort of go back and track that. And all this information is available via things like Microsoft Clarity.
Yeah, and they're starting to integrate AI as well, I believe, aren't they? Where it's going to look at,
Right.
or it's going to guess what the typical user might think about
It
your
will
website,
guess
or where
it.
they might
It
look,
will
where they
guess
might
it.
click.
It will guess it, but you will need to. There's an interpretation there that requires input from
Yeah,
the team, and also input
yeah, of course, yeah.
from the site owner, because there are nuances about sites and about things that say, well, we don't have that, we can't do that, or or we've never thought about that before, but we have this information now that we can apply. So I think as long as
Yeah.
you're using that responsibly and you're sort of saying you're applying some sort of sense to it, some sort of logic, and you're getting as many minds on that. I think it's great. I think that's one of the most useful pieces of AI I've seen, actually, is that just instead of having to look through a site, it just says, here are the highlights, bash, 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 and then you can use more of
Yeah,
your
yeah.
time, more of your critical thinking to analyze it. So I'm really behind that, actually.
Yeah, no, 100%. 100%. I know we use that in some of our workflows as well. So yeah, really quite useful stuff. If you could pick, I'm not going to put a number on it, but if you could sort of say, okay, what elements of a website would you improve to improve search engine visibility and the overall UX? What are some really practical things that people can do to their site that you believe would help from your experience? Maybe it's navigational changes, maybe it's just focus on
Yeah,
the mobile side.
yeah, no. For me, a big one is definitely navigation. We've been to so many been involved in so many websites that we've sort of inherited or whatever, and navigation is often a thing that's overlooked. It's like, yes, you've got a menu, okay, but are all are all the important pages in that menu? Number one, very often they're not.
Mm, yeah,
Um, you can talk to an SEO and look at analytics and look at what your most visited pages, and you can sort of see, well, is one of your your biggest categories not being visited? Why? Is it just not accessible? There's also on-page navigation, which again I think is critically overlooked. I mean, you if you can't navigate to a relevant part of your site on page, forget the nav menu. If you're supposed to be going, if you want to lead users somewhere on a page, you've got to make sure that path's there, because they won't always go back to the nav menu. And things like breadcrumbs as well. It's useful for humans, but also useful for Google to know. And just something that again is overlooked is having a descriptive link on a page. So not just to find out more or something like that. If you want to push people in a direction, You need to make it as easy for them to find that route as possible, isn't there? There's that analogy about that park path where they built a path through a park, and they assumed users would follow that path, but after a few weeks they noticed that people had made their own path across the grass because people were actually wanting to access a different part of the path, and the path didn't actually take them to where they wanted to go to. So there's always what you think users should be doing and what users actually end up doing. So, make sure that as best as possible you have those navigable routes and you think about where people need to be. Don't have any dead ends. Always make sure that there's a CTA, these sort of things. So I think navigation is huge, and people just assume it's a menu, whereas it's not. I mean, they can be pretty bad as they are, but understanding that navigation is about walking around a park sort of thing, walking around a website and not meeting any dead ends. But there are hundreds of things that you could focus on. I think something that we're still seeing is that a lot of mobile websites have a dreadful experience, and I think this comes down to a lot of website themes and a lot of website designers still not really considering that mobile is almost its own entity. It's you can't have the same sort of experience on mobile as you can on desktop. And I think a lot of designers still design desktop first and then try and cram it down into a mobile experience. And really, you have to consider that it has to be the other way around. You have to consider the content first, and sometimes even serve slightly different experiences, sort of content and whatever, in a different format to how, no, not just basically shrinking the screen. So I think having a good mobile experience, thinking about the different kind of way we approach content and how we use mobiles for data to access information is key as well. And I think that's something that most sites should be able to do. Should be able to serve up a very convincing, very usable mobile experience, and not just neglect it. And obviously, the big one is the type of content that you can provide, whether it's mobile or desktop. It doesn't matter. You have to really think about writing your content. You can't leave it to the last minute. You can't just assume, oh, here's a paragraph. We'll leave. A designer says, here's a paragraph to put your stuff in, and then we've seen it hundreds of times. It's come to we're a month away from launch, and the client still hasn't written any content. Where we are involved, and they've hired us as copywriters, that's not a problem because we've thought about it, we've considered it, we've talked to the designers. But often when it's left to a client, they can go, right, okay, I can write a paragraph, done. And writing is a skill. I can't do it. I can barely speak English.
Not me.
So having someone who knows how to write content for search engines, for users, Google is so much better at knowing the sort of written content that users want to read. Answering the questions that people also ask. Adding those sorts of things in, knowing what your users want, the information they need, answering those questions. I don't know. You've asked for one thing, haven't you? I've given you about 50. It's content. It's always going to be content first, I think. Make sure your content's written to the best of your ability. Hire someone to write it for you. Look at what Google's asking, what users are asking. Get your digestible, easy to read.
I think the mobile side of things, navigation, the mobile side of things, all the stuff you've said, like top three there, in my opinion. And the mobile side of things still, you can still tell when you go to most websites that they've just got the default, is it Bootstrap CSS that everyone uses?
Oh yeah, just wang everything into one column, done.
Yeah, column layout, just, but such a small screen. The screen real estate is literally 20% of what you get on your desktop, and you're still trying to serve up the same content. And I can't count the amount of times that I've gone to a mobile website and I've just, with all intention to purchase something or do something useful to that business, I've just not done it. Absolutely. I've not gone back either. And I think,
there's other things on mobile as well. So there's things like how you serve images. So you need to think about, optimizing images, because if you're out and about on data, if you can't
Tell you
assume
what,
everyone's got unlimited
my
data.
pet,
You've got to make
yeah,
sure that you're optimizing images. You're thinking about site speed and things like that. So yeah, the mobile thing is
I tell you
still.
what, my pet peeve for mobile forms. If I'm presented with a 25 field form at the best of times, let alone mobile, but on a mobile especially, and it's all fiddly. You're trying to, you've got fat forms like me. Honestly, no, I think,
Yeah, the fat thumb
yeah,
thing is
it
really
really,
hard. I'm with you on that one.
yeah. Um, cool. So we've probably touched on this a few times now, and I know you've mentioned things like MS Clarity, and I know we've got analytics and stuff like that. But what are the best ways to measure the impact of UX in your opinion, or is it KPI specific per business?
Yeah, well, I think that's it, isn't it? Yeah, there are tools that you can sort of track what's going on, and they'll give you things like bounce rates and how long people are staying on your site. So I think it is very unique to your business. If the KPI, if your end goal is to get more form submissions, that's an easy one to track, isn't it?
Yeah.
If it's more sales, you have to look at traffic, and you have to look at where that traffic came from, and then who do you sort of like, who won that one? Was it UX? Was it SEO? It's a hard one to know. Um, it's a hard one to know who won that one, but ultimately, I think it comes down to you must have very defined goals. You must know what equals a win. What is it that you want? Um, and I think if you can look beforehand what's happening on a website through things like Hotjar and Clarity, make some informed decisions by talking to the right people, and test that. You can do it with an A/B test if you want. So that means that you serve different users different approaches. So the original maybe and your tweaked one, and see if either of those are converting better, whatever that conversion is, and then go and check that data, see if it's worked or not. And if it hasn't worked, reiterate, have a bit of a think again, have another discussion. Maybe you've noticed that something else has happened as a result of those changes. So I think in terms of how do we measure it, I think it's it's like everything when it comes to UX at the moment, and SEO. It is looking at what the user's doing, trying to measure their intent, trying to. The other thing you can do, and we've been experimenting this a little bit this last week. I've noticed James has put up. Who was head of web design, has put up a new UX tool which allows users to go onto a website and ask them a series of questions. So it's more usability testing, if you like. So you can ask, a subset of people, go and try and find this thing on a website, try and see if you can convert, see if you can buy this thing. So there are, you can do usability testing as well. I mean, you need to get the right people. You might have to pay them. I don't know, um, but there are definitely ways you can track how successful certain things are once you've made changes. But I think the key thing is to test something out. Don't be afraid to test something out, and then check the data, and then refine it, and keep iterating until you are seeing the sort of results that you want. But you can only really do that if you talk to everybody involved. Is this the right sort of approach? Would doing this harm the website, in your opinion? If someone says, I don't think you've got the right content, talk to a copywriter. Obviously, I don't think it's laid out correctly. You can't see these sort of, maybe the CTA falls below the screen or something on mobile. So talk to a designer and try and achieve your little, tiny little marginal gains until you've sort of refined it to the point you think, I think this website now, this page, it is optimal. And it probably never will be. You'll always tweak, but test it, check the data, refine, iterate.
Keep going. Never ending, I imagine, isn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah. I don't think we've ever got to a point where we're happy with the website.
Right,
There are.
you've never said, right, completed it.
Yeah. You can't complete the web, otherwise, we'd all be millionaires, wouldn't we? That's
No.
it, done that. Yeah. But I think, yeah, we know that it changes. The web changes so much. Google changes so much. Users change so much that to say a page is done is it's only ever going to be done for a short amount of time before the market, whatever, moves on. And I think business owners know that. But being able to track the changes you've made and use logic and use expert advice along the way, you can only really go in one direction, hopefully. Up.
Oh, where has the time gone? 40 minutes in. Well, look, we're going to wrap up with a couple more questions.
Right, sure.
But no, I think this has been super interesting. I'm really grateful for you coming on. I think,
Yeah, enjoyed it.
yeah, it's always a learning experience for me. I know, SEO from what it was years back to what it is now, and the sorts of skill sets you need in a full SEO team nowadays is so wide, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Copywriters, strategists, link acquisition, UX, and I think it's becoming such a challenge now to bring that in-house. I think it's very expensive to do that successfully nowadays and lead a team that does it. So, yeah, I feel very fortunate that we've got a team here that can cover all those skill sets and bring, tie together a well-rounded strategy. So, where do you think it's all going? Future predictions from Pete Bingham.
Yeah, well, blimey. Future predictions. I think really we know that AI is going to be the next big thing, don't we? We know this is where we're all heading. We just don't know where exactly. We've seen, what Google announced, and how it's going to be bringing in, sort of content, a little bit of an evolution on featured snippets and stuff like that. So really, unfortunately, like we mentioned earlier, I think we're going to see SEOs try and influence AI in picking their content, which is not a. I'm not saying that's a terrible thing, because I mean that's what we do now anyway. We try and influence search
Yeah.
engines to pick our content, but again, we have to do this without gaming or spamming the system. So definitely AI is going to be a huge focus. I can't really see exactly where that's going, but again, it's going to be about making it user focused, helpful content. You have to make sure your content is spot on. You have to know your audience so well. But I think something that we are definitely going to see, which is going to have to involve AI in some way, or some sort of automation or machine learning, is that we're going to have to shift into personalization as well. So, like what
Yeah.
I talked about with Rebecca said earlier about the shop floor, about going into a shop and talking to someone and saying, "Look, I'm looking for this thing and I can't find it." Now, good navigation, good content, and good information is going to get you to the right place, but I still can see a shift into more personalized experiences on websites. And I don't know how that will look on some websites. I imagine it will work better for e-commerce sites than it will for service sites, or big B2B sites, where you already have that personalization, because you sort of say, "Yes, I'm interested, I want to talk to somebody," and then you sort of take it offline almost. But I can bring in that, maybe that's how it's brought into with B2B. There's more of an online discussion with maybe chatbots. I don't know, that sort of thing. AI is controlling the narrative, and you're talking to somebody about that knows the website as good as, or nearly as good as, someone who actually works there. You can train. There are ways of training AI now to learning all aspects of your website, and it being able to answer questions, uh, to a reasonable degree, and that's only going to get better. So definitely, personalization is going to be something that I think is going to impact UX and SEO, because I don't know how we can
Yeah.
personalize something and make it rank, because it would be very personal. You would, so you would, it would depends how Google's going to go with its AI. Is it going to be more personal? Is it going to know more about your browsing history, and about your, what you bought in the past, and sort of tailor an experience for you? I don't know. Very exciting, and there are going to be challenges for UX to be able to present that
Yeah.
personalization, as well as for copywriters, content creators, to make sure they have enough sort of content that's popular for everybody, but also something that's a little bit more personal. So, very very exciting, very uncertain times. We don't really know what's around the corner. I think anybody who's kept an eye on AI over the last certainly 2 months has had to sort of relearn everything almost on a weekly basis. I mean, I went on holiday for 2 weeks and I didn't even look at my phone, and I came back and there were whole phrases that I'd never heard of before. I was like, "What has happened to AI in 2 weeks?" It was insane. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. It is an exciting time. We're in a massive period of change. It's
Yep.
a little bit daunting, to be honest. If you're
Yeah.
the bag holder, so to
Yeah.
speak, if you're managing a marketing budget, if you're leading a marketing strategy at the minute, I imagine it's very difficult not to be a little bit, have a question mark over, okay, what's the next year going to look like for me personally and for my team and for the brand that I'm managing. And I find myself in that situation every now and then, running an agency, thinking, how's
Yeah.
our service offering got to change? How we got to adapt to it, and all things like that. So, yeah, it's exciting, probably a little bit daunting,
It's only
but
ever
it's
really
probably
gonna just
needed.
emphasize more that it's all about the user. So if you can keep that at the forefront of your mind,
Yeah,
that everything has to be tailored to the
yeah,
end
yeah.
user, to the audience, to the customer, if you can sort of everything you do sort of has that as its focus, hopefully you'll stay on the right track.
And that's probably the parting message, isn't it? All about the user.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I
That's
think
it.
that's
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 the
that's a good
podcast.
yeah, yeah, we've done it. We've completed it.
Yeah, yeah, finally. But look, Pete, I shall let you get back to work. I know we're very busy here. But no, thank you for coming
Thank
on.
you.
Really interesting. I'm sure we'll do a follow up. And yeah, thank you all for listening, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.